On this edition of the program, 1 month of the Trump administration down, 47 to go. Approval ratings are now upside down for the first time. We check in on the vibes with Kevin Ryan and ask, why does Canada hate us? With Evan Scrimshaw. It's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for Friday, February 21st. Your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you here in a literally freezing Austin, Texas. We have a great conversational episode, two of our favorites, easygoing back and forths between Evan Scrimshaw and Kevin Ryan and myself, not together, although that would be a really fun hang. But no, these are separate. We'll get into all that in a second. But before we do, I do want to hit you with a little bit of recent news that has happened over the last 48 hours. And that is, with Donald Trump's first month in office now coming to a close, we are seeing something that feels a little bit more familiar. Donald Trump's approval rating is now, according to 3 recent approval polls, underwater, meaning more people who disapprove of him than approve of him. Now, these are still essentially, in my opinion, about the same kind of conversation that we were having before. You have very, very intense beliefs on both sides that believe he is either doing a terrible or tremendous job, but these are the numbers. A CNN SSRS poll shows his approval at 47%, with 52% disapproving. Similarly, a Reuters Ipsos poll reports 44% approval and 51% disapproval, and Gallup's latest survey reflects a 45% approval and a 51% disapproval. Now, I have seen a few other numbers where he does still remain over 50% and net positive, but you know, there is a reality that the more you hear the president's name, oftentimes the less you like him. At the beating heart of this, however, is the same thing that got Joe Biden kicked out of office, which is the economy. There still are a tremendous amount of economic fears and anxiety. And now that people are reminded of the speed and volume of the Trump administration, and I mean volume in both senses, both in the amount of it and in how loud it is, I think that there's a little bit of like, okay. Now, if all this happens and the economy rebounds, well, I think that Donald Trump's going to be in a very, very good position. But if it does not, well, whatever mandate he might have had will not be here. A reminder that we still theoretically have the majority of his first 100 days in office ahead of us, although you would be forgiven if you forgot about that, because it feels like he's been in office for 6 months already. Okay, we're going to have a lot more news coming up in our update. Mitch McConnell retires, Kash Patel is our new FBI director, and some behind the scenes on positive things that may be happening with Ukraine and the United States vis-a-vis a mineral deal. But before we do that, this is going to come out and probably be listened to you after the big hockey game tonight. USA versus Canada, the final of the 4 nations face-off. All of this happens with the backdrop being a renewed hostile relationship between the United States and our neighbors to the north. Or should I say that it's mostly just Canada being mad at little ol' us, the States? We had to bring on our favorite Canadian. Well, there's a lot that's happening with our neighbors to the north. Not only are they in the midst of an election season, but also they hate us. And so we bring on somebody that we love. Evan Scrimshaw. How you doing, buddy?
Thanks for having me. I can say, well, I was going to say Canadians don't hate Americans, we just hate your government, but I'm not entirely sure that's true these days.
What's different than the normal whatever rivalry here? Obviously, Donald Trump has been confrontational with Justin Trudeau before. Justin Trudeau has never been less popular. But there is a switch that has flipped. I've seen it in emails and stuff that I've gotten to the various shows that I've done in my lifetime. I don't remember, except in international competitions, that the American anthem is regularly getting booed on Canadian soil. What's different?
So this isn't the first time that we've booed the anthem. We booed the anthem quite a bit in 2003. When we didn't go into Iraq, and George W. Bush was very mad at us for not going into Iraq with you guys.
Yeah.
The real reason is, unlike in 2017, so after the 2016 election, y'all voted for this. The American people voted for this. They chose this. And we are befuddled by that choice. We are baffled by that choice. We are deeply opposed to the choice that the 2024 election represented. And it's partially that, like, well, this ain't a fluke. You wanted this, you voted for this, so we're gonna treat you like responsible adults who are getting what they voted for. It's partially the fact that the response from Democrats to the Canada nonsense is, like, absurdly lacking. You can't even get banal statements of "we don't want Canada as the 51st state" out of Chuck Schumer or most leading Democrats. You can't get anybody to say that in a media interview. It's pathetic that nobody in the Democratic Party is standing for, Canada. But it's just it's nice to have a unifying. Canada's been bitterly divided over Justin Trudeau, over COVID politics, over a lot of things. And I think right now Canada just needs to blow off some steam, and booing your anthem and just being generally anti-American is a nice way to remind ourselves that there's more that unites us than divides us, especially going into an election season.
So this is, in a way, a bit of a panacea, a balm, a salve for the Canadian soul to say, you want to know what? Screw America.
Yeah, for sure. It's blowing off some steam. It's also, this is such a weird thing to say, but, like, we've been so used to devoting our, like, hatred energy towards Justin Trudeau for a while that, like, oh, we finally we lost him. We lost this person. I mean, he's still there.
That everybody could say, screw this guy.
We've lost this person we've all been hating on for like 3 years now. Hey, let's just replace it with Donald Trump, the American government, and the return of best on best international hockey has truly made this fantastic. From just
that's really what made it worth it. It just that game on Saturday, the atmosphere absolutely electric. The game itself, awesome, like playoff level tension, but with fights. Like, it was just so good.
Matthew, I have a love-hate relationship with the Kachuk brothers, which is to say that one of them is the captain of my Ottawa Senators, and the other one is just an asshole, but deeply, deeply attractive, which hurts me in my gay soul. But, like, Matthew Kachuk just going
Evan Scrimshaw, like, jeez Louise.
I am going to start this game, this first best on best hockey, probably the most important Canada-US match since the 2010 gold medal game in Vancouver. I'm just going to come out at rip and fight the first person I see.
Yeah.
Dude, I forever will love Kachuk for that. Like, it truly insane how that game started in the best way possible.
I mean, it was just a rabid crowd too. Like, and to start off with 3 fights, it's just like, oh man, because for folks who don't care about hockey, in high level international competition, you pretty rarely see fights unless it's the end of the game and somebody's getting blown out and you want to like set a tone or something like that. But never right off the rip, never with good players do you see, people whose hands actually matter in hockey. Do you see those kinds of fights? Just awesome. I don't know. That was one of those things where it's like, look, if we can settle this on the ice, then all right, we're gonna be fine. We're just yelling at each other. They're just booing. It's all right.
The Boston crowd better show up on Thursday night for the gold medal rematch.
Yeah, I didn't even know that this Four Nations thing was happening. I had no idea that it was. I've kind of fallen out of a lot of things over the last 6 months, but I didn't know it was a thing. But really, the NHL just kind of punked out the NBA. Like, the All-Star game has never been less relevant for the NBA, and everybody was watching that hockey game.
Legit. Like, the crazy thing is the discourse Wednesday morning on, like, sports Twitter, and especially, like, American sports Twitter, was like, I don't know what the NHL is doing. Seems like a bad time to not have any games, when right after football and everything. And then by about, what was it, 8:45 Eastern, even American sports Twitter was like, oh, this thing rips. Let's go.
Let's go.
Just, it's incredible. The NHL, I give, Bettman, the commissioner, a ton of grief. He found something with this, and it's gonna be a proper World Cup every 2 years. Every 4 years, but in the non-Olympic years, so there's going to be best on best hockey every 2 years. It's going to be incredible.
So basically, yeah, it's the same cadence that soccer has with, like, the World Cup and the Euros and stuff like that, where you wind up having some of the best teams that play each other, every 2 years, which is for the best. We should.
Yep, for sure. No, it's fantastic. The other part of the Canada stuff that's, like, super interesting is our election has gone from, like, deeply, deeply uncompetitive to, like, oh boy, the Liberals might actually.
Okay, all right, hold on. I want to get to that in a second, because I have some totally disconnected thoughts about that. But before we go into that, I do have one more Trudeau question, and this is something that I just don't understand the parliamentary politics of, like, once Justin Trudeau is a lame duck, right? And you do know that you have this election coming up where the Liberal Party, is probably going to lose. The question is how much they lose by. Don't you want the heir apparent? Don't you want him in the rooms talking to Trump? Don't you want that person to be doing things in some kind of official capacity? Is that possible? Like, why is Justin Trudeau still front and center on any of this when everybody knows that he's gone?
So it's partially the fact that the guy who is extremely likely to win, Mark Carney, has no official title, and the person who is supposed to be the heir apparent, former Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, is now hated by everybody who works for Justin Trudeau for her act of betrayal that made him resign.
Gotcha.
But it's also that Trudeau has to make it is also partially a tactical point, which is Trudeau has to make threats, and so we would like Trudeau to be the bad cop, and then when the new guy, or theoretically,
let him be the toxic dump of where all of this is going, and let him be irradiated, and then you will cast him aside, and there will be a new, fresh change in the Liberal Party.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So when we last left you to talk about Justin Trudeau and to talk about where the state of Canadian politics was, it seemed pretty clear, for reasons both micro and macro, that the Conservative Party would retain the prime ministership. What I have seen almost exclusively by following your Twitter and people that you either quote tweet or reply to is that things seem to have tightened. Have they tightened to the point where Liberals believe that they have an opportunity to retain Parliament?
Yes. So, depending on the pollster, the Conservatives would either win a narrow majority government, or it's legitimately could, the Liberals could have the most seats again, and it could basically just be 2021 Redux again. Liberals certainly have a spring in their step. You've had multiple parliamentarians who had previously said they were going to retire, actually saying, I'm going to run again. I like my chances more in the current circumstances, so I'm going to actually recontest my seat again. even the pollsters that are that haven't swung as much are still seeing, big, sizable, significant swings. And there is very much a sort of, pep in the step, a sort of a je ne sais quoi to the position of liberals right now. And, I'm talking to people privately. I'm talking to people in, people who were more optimistic, less optimistic, people who, thought that the comeback could kind of sort of happen, people who were more skeptical. And everybody says the same thing, which is the liberals can win this election if they run a good campaign. And, people are divided on whether that will happen, but even the hardcore skeptics who were talking, annihilation, the party literally potentially not
death of the party,
are now talking like, yeah, we might win.
All right, let me ask you this. Isn't this Kamala Harris all over again? It feels, again, I don't know the specifics, so I am totally removed, but like, guy drops out, all of a sudden the fundamentals of the race have totally changed, and now people really, really believe that there's a chance that this thing can happen, despite the fact that it was considered to be extremely unlikely. Feels like, a thing that we just did here in the States, not but a few months ago.
Yeah, it's entirely possible it's Kamala Harris 2.0, but the thing is, we would all take Kamala Harris 2.0 because Joe Biden, I think it's fairly safe to say that if Biden had stayed the nominee, Democrats would have lost New Jersey, they probably would have lost New Mexico, probably, arguably would have lost Maine, and, New York probably would have been in considerable play, right? We would have been talking about toss-up New York the final weekend of that campaign if Joe Biden had
which means you probably lose Virginia too, because Virginia.
Oh, Virginia definitely not that. That's not even on the table. Sorry, yeah, for sure. So Kamala not only didn't lose any of the states that we just named, she also got the national popular vote and the electoral college tipping point to about a 1.5 point loss. If say that Biden was going to end up losing the popular vote by 8. Personally, I think it would have eroded to the point where he loses by 10, but let's say it's 8. She outperformed by 6.5 points. That's a huge overperformance. Democrats wouldn't have 200 seats in the House right now if Joe Biden were the nominee. They have 215. Like, even if, I still think the conservatives are going to win, because I do think this is a little bit of sugar high, but the two things I would say, one, Pierre Poilievre is not running as nearly coherent and on-brand machine as Donald Trump did. And Pierre Poilievre is running a campaign that is, stuck in the Justin Trudeau of it all and is struggling to pivot. Whereas Trump's campaign, and you were on this way earlier than everybody else, or not everybody, but most everybody, that Trump's campaign in 2024 was really, really good.
It was well run.
Surgically good. Even though, whatever you think of the candidate, the stuff around the candidate, the machine, the ads, the targeting, that was all on point going back to, mid-2023. Poilievre hasn't been having a great machine. He's just been getting to run against a government that is apocalyptically
deeply unpopular. Yeah.
And the other thing is Kamala Harris was the VP to the guy who was unpopular and left.
Oh yeah. That is a big thing, yeah.
Has never served in an official capacity, hasn't taken a government check since Stephen Harper was prime minister, the former conservative, has impeccable conservative credentials. And, literally was in England for the first 4 years of Justin Trudeau's tenure. So at literally any and all complaints about a lot of the stuff that conservatives hate about Trudeau, literally he had another job for.
Yeah. So there is an element of outsiderism. When is election day?
We don't know. So
I still don't know. God, you goofy parliamentarian folk. Jeez, set a date.
So it could go as long as October. It's not going to go as long as October. The debate that is currently being had in liberal circles that I have written about, and this is such an arrogant thing to say, but it's also true, which is if I'm writing a column about something, it's probably because somewhere between 5 and 10 senior liberals have asked my opinion on something, and I've just decided instead of answering them, I'm just going to write a column about it.
Write a column, yeah.
The debate is either calling the election in like mid-March for like a mid-April polling day, or waiting until like basically calling it the weekend of like the Masters for like an early May polling date is kind of the debate that's sort of ended up in the party. I think right now we're leaning mid-March election call, mid-April polling day.
So it'll happen soon. We are in trigger distance.
For sure, yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. If Canada wins this game for the Four Nations, I think you should call it then. That you should do it. You should do it from the ice.
Unfortunately, Mark Carney won't be PM until March 10th. So.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so that's when he would come in as prime minister.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's the first time that you can, the first time that he could do it. So he could do it almost immediately.
Yep. Yeah. No, he can. So the funny thing is that our prime ministerial, like our version of the White House is like run down, like full of asbestos, and we're just being too cheap to renovate it.
Yeah.
So Trudeau and his family have basically unofficially taken this cottage on the grounds that are run by our governor general. So basically they're living at like an outhouse of the, it's not Buckingham Palace, it's not anywhere near as regal, but kind of it's like if the British Prime Minister lived in an outhouse on the grounds of Buckingham Palace. But like literally Justin Trudeau can just like, he literally does not have to leave his property line technically to go to see the governor general to resign and then walk back.
Gotcha.
Like, it's hilarious how small Ottawa is.
So were you a Carney guy before? I didn't know that. I don't remember where your take was on him, but it seems like he has overperformed expectations since becoming the heir apparent.
Massively outperformed expectations. The week before I ended up endorsing him for leader, I published a column about how I don't think his record as a central banker is nearly as impressive as everybody else does, which is a column I absolutely would not have hit publish on if I would have known that none of the people I actually wanted to run for leader ended up running. But he's been significantly impressive. The Liberals had a leader in the late 2000s, early 2010s, a guy by the name of Michael Ignatieff, former Harvard prof, quasi-known Canadian intellectual who moved to America for 30 years and then came back to run for leader. Spoiler alert, the guy who wasn't in Canada for like 30 years did not do well. And there was some concern that Carney, who wasn't out of Canada for nearly as long, but, similarly like, intellectual, academic, was not really gonna pop as a politician. Carney's got better instincts. And the other thing is he is being advised by all of the smart people who used to advise Justin Trudeau, who, left for various reasons. And so he actually has the A-team of the old Trudeau machine when the Trudeau machine was actually good, as opposed to the people who were still running the Trudeau machine up until, the wheels finally fell off. And the staff on that campaign are making a ton of very smart strategic decisions that are paying off and are like genuinely quite impressive.
All right, real quick. I'm trying to see where the online markets are with some of this, but it looks like there's still 67% that the election will be called before April. So you would say, yeah, that's still worth taking, right? If it's looking at a March call.
Yeah, I would like to be able to say that, because my preference would be for an April call for reasons that you can read on my Substack, and I'm not going to bore you with. But my instinct, but I don't think I'm going to win this fight in the party, unfortunately. Yeah. I am but one man, so Yeah, I'm expecting a March call for sure.
Yeah. I think it makes sense. Also, if you're look, you gotta throw your cards on the table. If you've replaced your prime minister, say, go. Let's start the process. There does not seem to be a market right now for results, but if you were to bet on it sounds like a conservative win is something that you would probably bet on, but a narrow majority.
Yeah, so my current model right now is the conservatives, like, I think 3 seats short of the majority government line, but that's
Okay.
a now cast based on current polls. That's not a prediction of where we'll be on election day. FanDuel Canada had some odds. I have the conservatives at 28-1 to be the opposition, aka for the Liberals to win.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Because they took down their government odds, but they didn't take down their opposition odds. So I have
Oh.
a little bit on that. But like, my breakdown of the probabilities would probably be like 50% conservative majority, 25% conservatives biggest party short of a majority, 25 liberals biggest party short of a majority.
All right. Let's turn our eyes back down south of the border from Canada. A few election Twitter discourses that I wanted to bring to your attention because you, like me, are a total sicko that actually thinks about these kinds of things. Midterm Senate races. What do you think about Mayor Pete in Michigan?
No.
No,
I
as
love Mayor
in
Pete. I love him.
Yeah.
I think he's a generationally good communicator. No. He has like no connection to the state except for the fact that he moved there with his husband, which is fine. People move.
Yeah.
But the thing is that he has no connection to the state except for a fairly crass political calculation that was made that he doesn't have a chance in his red home state.
Yeah.
And the problem for Mayor Pete is that no matter what was actually in his head and in his heart when he decided to move to Michigan, nobody will ever believe it was for anything other than crass politics. And so it would be just an unnecessary, needless risk in what should be an otherwise sort of like pretty easy retain for Democrats in a state with a very solid bench that we just don't need. What he actually should have done is move to Massachusetts because he went to Harvard and primary ed market. You're wait until he retires. Like that's what he should have done. A place where he at least has some relationship, not moving to a state. The other thing about the Midwest, and the reason it's harder to do this in the Midwest, Midwesterners don't move. The percent, like Michigan's like one of the top, 3-5, I don't remember the exact number, states for people who were born in that state, living in that state. This isn't Texas. This isn't California. This isn't even New York,
that's the other thing.
Everybody's a transplant, so who cares?
Yeah, with carpetbagging, you can carpetbag in the Sun Belt. You can carpetbag in California. You can carpetbag in some of the plain states, but usually you're moving there from states like Michigan, right? You're moving there from states like Illinois. So it is hard to do it. Now, let me say this. I hear your argument. And my initial perspective was to agree with it. But I kind of feel like the Mayor Pete chances are being so far talked down that now I've begun to talk myself into them. His polling is good. It is very robust, at least early on. If he can win in a primary where he's going to be flagged as a carpetbagging, crass political operator, does that help him beat the allegations? And at that point, you're into a state that the Republicans haven't won in forever.
So I think people are potentially over-egging the general election risk in the sense that just normal six-year midterm would suggest, and we can treat this like a six-term midterm because Trump is, it is his second term. Traditionally a six-term midterm would imply that there's going to be a pretty big swing, which means that generic Democrat v. generic Republican is going to be,
tiebreaker in the favor of
D4,
the
it's going to be like a D4 race or whatever. And then is carpetbagging going to be worth that much? Mike Rogers, who's the likely Republican, doesn't seem, because it looks like John James is going to run for governor, not for Senate. That doesn't look like that should be that hard to overcome, but I don't think he can win a primary, plainly, given.
His polls seem to suggest that he could.
But early polling is just a name recognition thing. That's all it is, and we all know.
But also,
that.
he's got to. I agree. But also, he's going to have a very recognizable name. He's been in the national scope for a while now, since 2020.
Michigan Democrats have been very good at winning statewide elections, and I don't think they're suddenly going to risk. I don't think they're going to risk it to enable Pete Buttigieg's presidential ambitions.
I don't know. I feel like if I had the ability to bet him now, I would. I feel like I would have better odds. Because the one thing about him is that, like, look, he ran a really good campaign, enough to go from who the hell is that guy to national prominence in 2020. He's probably going to have much of the same team along with him. He's going to be swimming in money. He's going to be able to blanket the state. And the only problem that he would have is that A, he's cold, and B, he is not from there. So he's probably going to have moments like he's already had out in Michigan where he doesn't know when the Lions game is. Does that sink him? I don't know. If he's got the right, if he can formulate the right argument to say this is why Michigan needs to send me to the Senate, I feel like he's probably going to be able to prosecute it pretty well. I think that a lot of the pushback now is that Michigan does have a very deep bench. It is a state that has cultivated a very strong party, and the GOP in that state has been at times laughably ridiculous. So I see it, but also I can see a path. Like, I can see a path to Senator Buttigieg.
Yeah, I can see it too. The thing that helps him in a way is the deep bench, because I don't think he can win a head-to-head primary. I think he can get 36% in a four-person primary. For credible person, I don't know if there's going to be, minor or whatever's on the ballot. But, like, if, Haley Stevens, Hillary Shilton, I don't think that's how you pronounce it, the one in Grand Rapids, obviously, one of Benson or Nassau. I think Nassau's the one who wants to run for Senate. That's at least three credible challengers there. I'm sure I'm missing people. You need probably, but of those three, of the three sort of strong female candidates, the one who won Slotkin's old seat, Dan Kilday's old seat, probably might run too. Like, you can't have all four of them run. You need that to be two at most. Because the way he wins this is if a lot of strong, and I do think strong female candidates would be especially good for him, splitting the vote, all of them getting between like 22 and 15, and he just gets to ride off in the low 30s. Something sort of Florida 2018 governor-esque in that primary. Yeah.
All right, the only other Senate prospective Senate race, I should also point that out because few people have announced for either of these that we're going to talk about. The first being Michigan, the second being Georgia, where Jon Ossoff is going to defend his seat. The question is whether or not Brian Kemp, the popular governor, two-term governor, will run. My priors on this is that I think Ossoff is not a great candidate, borderlining on one that could be exposed. I think that Kemp is a good candidate and one that is, he has the environmental and machine impacts that everybody kind of said Stacey Abrams did. I tend to think that I would lean this toward Kemp if that were the race, but I've seen a lot of, Jon Ossoff is underrated discourse where, say, Scrim.
Ossoff is wildly underrated, and I think your mistake here is, one, I think people are disrespecting David Perdue right? Part of the reason Jon Ossoff ran and was the nominee in 2020 for the full-term Senate seat was because nobody prominent in Georgia Democratic politics thought they could beat David Perdue.
Yeah.
The reason that Jason Carter and Michelle Nunn and Stacey Abrams all said no to that race, and the reason Warnock wanted to run in the special, not in the full term, was because of the fact that they all thought David Perdue was an incredibly strong incumbent. To win by 1 on the same ballot paper in the runoffs that Warnock won by 2, when you're running against a full-term incumbent and he's running against Kelly Loeffler, was incredibly impressive and arguably far more impressive from Ossoff. Ossoff has proven himself to be an incredibly good fundraiser. He's been incredibly effective in the Senate at local Georgia things, at getting dollars for rural hospitals, for getting, battery plants and sort of federal, pork barrel, if you want to call it that, funding back to the state
money
of
for
Georgia.
back home.
He has championed a very, very popular cause banning congressional stock trading, which is going to play extremely, extremely well in Georgia. Whether they make it law or not, he either gets to rail on this accomplishment, or I had been one of the leading voices for this in Congress, and I need to go back there to get it done. I think also...
You really think that plays in the Georgia Senate election?
2017, and they have underrated how impressive that 2020 run was of his. And I think the other thing that people are mistaking, Stacey Abrams was not nearly as good of a candidate as a lot of people want to say she was. She was a great organizer, but she was a horrible candidate. And I think a lot of the Kemp strength and the idea that he was some super impressive candidate was
Abrams' weakness.
Is actually Abrams' weakness.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just don't want to accept this because a certain brand of liberal... I'm not saying this about you. I'm saying this about people on elections Twitter and people who have gotten mad at me over the years for saying this. A lot of white liberals really wanted to praise a black woman for her contributions to this, and therefore couldn't accept that she was
very Limbaugh take. Very Limbaugh take from Scrimshaw.
No,
very
but
desirous to see a black woman succeed.
It's not about not wanting a black woman to succeed. Part of the reason I am quite confident in this is that I think Lucy McBath, assuming she runs for governor, is going to basically cakewalk into the governor's mansion.
I agree with you. I would not fire you off ESPN Countdown. I agree. I think that there was a lot of narrative that went into Stacey Abrams' rise. The fact that she was, she's charismatic. She can do an interview. I don't think that she was the right fit. I'm here to say I agree with you that she was not the strongest competition that Kemp could go up against. That being said, I do think that there are a few people that can bridge that suburban divide in a post-MAGA world that can kind of play to both. And I think Kemp is probably one of them. And in that state, I think if you can unite those tribes, it's really hard to lose statewide.
Sure. The counterpoint is that Georgia still, in a relative sense, moved pretty considerably to the left in 2024. In 2020, Georgia voted, what would that have been, 4 points to the right of the nation? In 2024, it voted half a point right of the nation. That's still...
Yeah, but that was also the nation itself was lurching right.
No, I'm aware, but to only move 2 points, 2.25 points, whatever, in a 6-point swing nationally is incredibly is a real side of the times. Georgia isn't stopping moving, and if you get something that's closer to a D2, let alone a D4 or whatever, and I don't think it's going to be some D9 environment, but if you're in a D2, a D4, Georgia now basically votes like the nation does, and it's probably going to be a blue-leaning year. And is Kemp 2 points better than Ossoff? Maybe.
I think
is
so.
Is he 4, 6? Probably not.
Yeah. I also don't think that Ossoff has ever really had the national glare on him. That was the biggest thing for me. My priors are really based on, like, I've seen them both live, and Kemp I can see as a personality shining when the light hits him. Ossoff I could see shrinking, but that was,
I don't know, man.
I got him. I got him.
Had the national spotlight on him quite a bit.
I mean, has he?
In the runoffs, that was the political story for 2 months.
It was, and Warnock was the hood ornament there. Ossoff, to your point, and this backs up your point, Ossoff was the one that people thought was going to lose. So I don't think a lot of people focused on him for that reason. They focused on.
But he was also the swing vote. He was vote number 50.
He was, and that's, I mean, the reason why that night was so magical for Democrats was because they got something that I don't think that they were realistically expecting. And I do think that part of that, again, is that, like, for whatever we say about Perdue and his strength, he was not on the campaign trail. He got sick for 2 weeks and he didn't show up. And that was, and also Donald Trump, the head of their party, was doing vote suppression for their entire ticket, which is, I think, something that just kind of gets memory hold in two very close elections with Warnock and Ossoff winning, is that, like, Donald Trump was telling Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue voters, your vote doesn't matter. And I know that because I was there in a rally, and that's what they were telling me, is that my vote doesn't matter. I'm not going to vote tomorrow.
That is, look, the runoffs are like, the 2020 runoffs are a masterpiece in terms of storytelling, political storytelling, because there's so many factors to it. The other thing I would just say, incumbent senators in sort of, I'm not going to say wave years, but in out-party
favorable
years,
environmental years, yeah.
Incumbent senators, unless there's basically no modern historical comp for a party losing an incumbent senator in a favorable year, unless that senator is in, like, a hugely, partisan for the other side state.
Anti-partisan.
The closest would be Bill Nelson in Florida, but I think the true answer to that was Hillary's 2016 Florida margin was a little bit, like, was a little bit of a mirage.
Yeah.
But, like, Republicans weren't losing incumbent senators in 2010 or 2014. Democrats kept, incumbents in tight races across 2018. 2006, same thing. Democrats didn't lose senators. Like, it would be one of the more impressive Senate wins in a long time. I think more impressive than any of the 2022 Democratic Senate wins. Or the core four, I should say.
Yeah.
It would be far more impressive than any of those if Kemp were to win. Now, I'm not out here being like, John Ossoff is is absolutely gonna win.
No, the question was underrated. That was it. The question was underrated.
For sure. I also think we're probably underrating the chance that Kemp just says no.
I think that's what I have heard, and I'm, like, lightly like plugged in for whatever reason to Georgia politics gossip.
Well, you've been there a lot recently.
What I have heard is that he's probably going to do it, but he doesn't want to. He is very well aware that this is going to be a crappy job that he is essentially going to take until he figures out where the party is going, and he can decide whether or not he wants to run for president. But it's better to be a hero in the Senate than to be just on the farm.
The counterpoint I will make is that we thought, not necessarily me and you, but I think the conventional wisdom was Republicans had a decent chance of recruiting Brian Sandoval, Doug Ducey, and Chris Sununu in 2022, and they went a striking 0 for 3 on getting any of them to do the job.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a Rick Scott special right there. 22.
Governors like having executive power. Once you have had executive power, it is really hard for you to get super jazzed about being the 11th person to speak at a senatorial committee hearing.
But counter, Hogan ran in 24. And essentially he was just kind of a stalking horse to make Democrats spend money in Maryland, but he did run.
No, that's a fair case. I'm not saying it's dispositive. I just think guy who is like actively saying through media allies, I don't want to do it. I think people are doing the like, yeah, he doesn't want it, but like he's just playing hard to get thing, and he will do it. And I just think the chance that he decides to pass on this are higher than I think people would think. And I also know from, or at least have heard, again, extremely lightly plugged in, that Kemp respects Ossoff as an opponent. That Ossoff is a bit of a litmus test within Georgia Republicans, and the smarter Georgia Republicans respect Ossoff more than some of the like dumber ones.
You know, it's going to be interesting to see if he takes it, and it'll be a good test. To me, that's the heavyweight fight, right? Like that's the midterm race to watch.
I mean, Susan Collins potentially depends on whether or not Democrats can, like, depends on who Democrats run and what the polling looks like.
Yeah, but no one gets excited about a Susan Collins race. A John Ossoff, Brian Kemp race.
I think you underestimate how upset Democrats were that we didn't get her last time.
Oh, certainly. Look, no, there are plenty of people for whom hate Susan Collins with the passion of 1,000 suns that will pay attention to it. I'm talking about in terms of the national media spotlight. I think you would see the vast majority of cameras in Atlanta and the surrounding environs, and then
it also helps that a certain three named media company is headquartered in Atlanta.
Well, there's that.
Let's be real here.
There's that. I don't know. I think it would be the most, because I do think that Kemp wouldn't get in. Part of what I think you are right is that you see these polls that leak periodically or get published periodically. That's like, oh, Kemp +4, Kemp +5, Kemp +6. Everybody else down 8 against John Ossoff. And I think that those are coaxing for Brian Kemp. The only question is whether or not he believes them.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the last Senate. I mean, I guess it's Bill Nelson, Rick Scott is the last sort of like totemic, true heavyweight fight that we've seen equivalent to this. I mean, Georgia voters, I feel bad for you, but you're going to have two heavyweight fights because, again, I think Lisa McBath is going to run for governor, and she is a political force unto herself, and that's going to, whoever Georgia Republicans run for governor, that's going to be a fight. Sorry to anybody in Georgia who watches ad-supported media, because the ad...
Oh, you're going to get it.
Anytime soon.
You're going to get it. Evan Scrimshaw, where can people find you?
Political writing, scrimshawunscripted.substack.com, my YouTube channel for political content and some sports. I have sort of semi-recurring F1... an F1 podcast that I do with a friend. I'm going to be doing Smarter People Explain Baseball and College Basketball to me in the lead up to baseball season and March Madness, and I'm working on some way to figure out how I want to do hockey. Sports writing, TBD, to be announced. I need Canada to slow down for at least like 72 hours.
No, this is prime time. If you if you want to know how things are going down in Canadian politics, then this is the time to subscribe to Scrim, because he is the way to do it. And I've gotten this a few times from a few people, so now we actually just have to put it on this on the calendar, maybe after the Canadian election. But we need to do our worst state parties draft again, because I feel like there has been enough ridiculousness that has happened that we have maybe some new challengers, some old favorites. Will the Will the Florida Democrats and the Arizona Republicans remain at the top of the draft? We'll have to see. Maybe we'll closer to the NFL draft. Maybe that's what we'll do.
We'll have to wait and see what happens with Eric Adams to see just how high.
Oh my God.
Party. We should run the three-man weave with Jakubowski for that one.
We should. Yeah, let's do that. All right, Scrim. Thank you so much.
Thanks, buddy.
This is your update, brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you get our bonus episodes. And we tried a little something different. In the past, the late edition of PX3 came out in like about the mid time of the day on Thursday. And I wanted to get anything that came out in the morning, but for a few reasons, some of which are my schedule, but also I want to shake things up and try something different. The late edition on Thursday is now going to be ready for your morning commute, which means that if you only listen to PX3 on your drive into the office, you are now going to have an episode on Thursday morning. That's my promise to you. And I'm happy to do it. I love to do it. I love to do those 2 bonus episodes for anybody who dares to put their own currency on the line to get this show, because independent things like this, look, we rely on the largesse of you, the audience, and I could not be more happy to have built this community with your help and with your financial support. So head on over, TakePoliticsSeriously.com for as little as $3 a week, billed as $12 a month, or just go ahead and pony up for the $99 for the entire year. Set it and forget it, my friends. 150 bonus episodes each and every year. So wait, no, 150 episodes. That's less than $1 an episode. It's such a good deal, I sometimes forget how good it is. Let's get into some of the news that we didn't have a chance to cover. On his 83rd birthday, Senator Mitch McConnell announced that he will not seek re-election in 2026. Wait, hold on. We got to do it right. On his 83rd birthday, Senator Cocaine Mitch McConnell announced that he will not seek re-election in 2026, concluding over 4 decades of service in the U.S. Senate. First elected in 1984, McConnell has been a pivotal figure in Republican politics, notably serving as the Senate Republican leader from 2007 until stepping down in 2024. His tenure is marked by strategic legislative maneuvers and a significant impact on the federal judiciary, including the confirmation of 3 Supreme Court justices during President Donald Trump's administration. But in recent years, McConnell's influence within the GOP has waned amid the party's shift toward Trump's populist movement. Despite health challenges, he has remained active in legislative affairs, often opposing some of Trump's more controversial decisions, such as certain cabinet appointments or presidential pardons. McConnell's retirement sets the stage for a competitive race in the Kentucky Senate seat. At least it could be if there's one Democrat who runs. Potential Republican candidates include former Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron and U.S. Representative Andy Barr. Despite Democratic Governor Andy Beshear's popularity, a Democratic victory in the historic Republican state remains challenging. So will Andy Beshear run? That's the big question right now. I don't think he will. If he doesn't, I don't think anybody has a shot in Kentucky. I don't really particularly think even Andy Beshear has a shot in Kentucky on that level. But, you know, if anybody was going to do it, Beshear would be the one. As McConnell prepares to conclude his term, he has expressed a commitment to addressing national security concerns and reinforcing America's global standing, indicating a focus on unfinished business in his remaining time in office. We'll save a big Mitch McConnell retrospective until he is closer to actually leaving, because I'm kind of curious to see what he does in these next few months. One thing he did not do is vote against Kash Patel, like he voted against Pete Hegseth, at Tulsi Gabbard, and RFK Jr. That means that Patel did indeed get confirmed. He is now the new Federal Bureau of Investigation's director with a narrow 51-49 vote. Republican Senator Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski joined all Democrats in opposing his confirmation. Patel, a 44-year-old attorney and staunch ally of President Trump, has held various roles, including public defender, trial attorney in the Department of Justice, and chief of staff to the acting Secretary of Defense during Trump's first term. He is notably recognized for his efforts to challenge investigations into Russian interference in the 2016 election and for promoting theories about the FBI's alleged bias against Trump. His confirmation has sparked significant controversy. Democrats and some Republicans have expressed concerns about Patel's lack of independence and potential conflicts of interest. Notably, he holds financial ties to Elite Depot Limited, the parent company of Chinese online retailer Shine, and has received restricted shares of Trump Media and Technology Group. During his confirmation hearing, Patel declined to commit to refraining from investigating President Trump's political adversaries aligning with the administration's unitary executive theory. His appointment signals a potential shift in the FBI's direction with implications for its independence and future operations. Or, if you are very excited about Kash Patel coming in, it is the beginning of a new day that will be without weaponization and political partisanship that has done quite a bit to hamstring, historically, a lot of different people, but most recently, Donald John Trump. This is worth noting because the one thing I will say a month into this Trump administration is that it is fast. It's loud. You can be forgiven to say that it is chaotic in that it is making a lot of noise and sometimes will say a thing that is totally out of pocket. We're going to get to one of those in a second. But it is moving extraordinarily fast in the levers of government, the likes of which we have never really seen, and including confirmations, cabinet confirmations. Kash Patel was thought to be unconfirmable. Tulsi Gabbard was thought to be unconfirmable. Hegseth was thought to be unconfirmable. All three of them now are in their positions, voted on, getting to work. As for what Kash will do, well, that remains an open question. He has pledged to shut down elements of the FBI that he views as superfluous, and, we'll see whether or not he keeps to it. He said he was going to turn entire floors of the FBI building into a museum to the deep state. There is a difference between being a good podcast guest and being the director of the FBI. We will see how Kash will go. One of those things that was totally out of pocket from the Trump administration, what he said about Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Ukraine yesterday on Truth Social. It sent shockwaves specifically throughout American social media and Europe writ large. And now we get a sense as to why. We talked about it at the time on our late edition, but this is from Axios. This is a scoop from Axios. The Trump administration has given Ukraine an improved draft for a minerals agreement after Volodymyr Zelenskyy rejected the initial offer, angering Trump. The dispute over minerals deepened tensions, with Trump calling Zelenskyy a dictator and Zelenskyy accusing Trump of spreading Russian disinformation. However, a deal now appears likely. Zelensky's aides have urged him to sign the updated proposal to avoid further clashes and secure U.S. support. Quote, there was a significant improvement to the recent draft and it conforms with Ukrainian law. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz emphasized negotiations. Ukraine wants to negotiate minerals, and so we're talking about it. Ukraine has a vast rare earth mineral reserve, potentially worth trillions. The minerals deal is not explicitly linked to ending the war, but has become entangled in broader U.S.-Ukraine tensions. Last week, and this is important, Zelenskyy rejected a U.S. draft agreement granting 50% mineral revenues to the U.S. and overriding Ukraine's trade deals. Trump wanted an immediate signature last week. Zelenskyy refused, saying that he needed to read over what they had given him. Then J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio meet with Zelenskyy at the Munich conference. They give him a new version of the draft to address some of his concerns. They say, okay, are you going to sign it? And he says, well, I can't sign it. I need Parliament to approve it. That apparently being sent home empty twice by Zelenskyy is what pissed Donald Trump off. That is where he decided to play hardball by posting on Truth Social. It appears that now that has shaken loose whatever final levels of negotiation would be here in this kind of cooperative economic deal. And now we seem to be moving forward with the economic portion of this deal. So I will say that while I do find it to be particularly distasteful to see Donald Trump denigrating Ukraine, which, think whatever you will about the process there, unless you get into fairly deep conspiracy, I don't know. I don't personally see enough to say that Zelenskyy is not at least a complicated figure for which has represented a pitiable people in Ukraine, right? They've lost a lot of people. There's a lot of death. There's a lot of destruction. They are certainly on the knife's edge with Russia, which is an expansionist power. And as I said on the bonus episode yesterday, Zelenskyy doesn't have a ton of future power. This is pretty much, I think, the last ride for him in terms of him being a major power player on the level that he has been of the last 3 years. As soon as this conflict comes to some kind of an end, it's unclear whether or not he'll be president again, and we go on from there. It would not shock me if he were not the president by the time that Donald Trump leaves the White House. So it is not beyond Trump. And to be honest, Zelenskyy, to talk tough on social media to try to get what they want. Donald Trump is the same dude who gave out Lindsey Graham's personal phone number and then went golfing with him like a month later. This is a part of how he sees a negotiation, bad-mouthing you publicly. It would not shock me at all in one bit. It would not shock me at all if Zelenskyy signs that agreement, and the next thing you see on Truth Social is Vladimir Zelenskyy, a very brave man who has stood up to a very, very tough and overwhelming foe in Vladimir Putin, has just inked a tremendous deal that is great for America and great for Ukraine, and we look forward to making money and defending our friendship and our economic interests going forward. It just would not shock me if that were the case, because that, to me, is the way that Donald Trump operates. Will it? Will the agreement be signed? Looks like possibly. But the next big thing is this negotiation to end the war. But that's our update. TakePoliticsSeriously.com is where you support this show. Head on over there and do it. Come on, join the team. We got a lot going on here, baby. Lots going on. All right, let's get to Kevin Ryan. We are barely a month into the Trump 47 term, and I needed to bring back somebody to help me make sense of what is going on. A vibe shift realignment. The bully is now the underdog. The underdog is now the bully. Kevin Ryan.
Yes, sir.
The Blaze and so much more. How you doing, buddy?
Good, dude. Yeah, I loved it last night. You were like, let's do vibe check. That was it.
Because it's getting weird, man. And you want to know what? This was even before, as I'm recording this on Monday, Twitter, which has now very much been dominated by the right-leaning accounts that used to fight with the left-leaning accounts. Many of the most insane left-leaning accounts went to Blue Sky. Some of them have begun to migrate back into the fray, but it's a lot of right-wing stuff. And so there's like not a lot of pushback to things, but like I have not seen SNL 50, but the 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live was last night as I record this on NBC. And they did a version of the Black Jeopardy sketch with Tom Hanks as a Trump supporter.
I saw
and
that.
it's getting roundly destroyed on Twitter when, like, two things. Number one, the whole point of that sketch is the only person who really understands black people are old Trump voters, like faith and family Trump voters. That's the whole point. That sketch exists so black people can know a thing and a white person cannot know a thing. This was a zag on the premise, and so now all of a sudden it's like Tom Hanks, the original one. I've not seen the one that they did on SNL 50, but the original one, it's like Tom Hanks knows all the Medea movies because they're about faith and family, right? And so it's like that's the joke. And that plus the one thing that people are like freaking out about is that Keenan, the host of Black Jeopardy, comes over to shake his hand, and initially Hanks is kind of like put it back by it.
He won't do it. Yeah.
But then he shakes his hand. Number one, I think Keenan screwed up the joke because you need to come in faster so it's a funnier thing than it's like, oh,
Keenan
he thinks
screws
he's
up
being
all
attacked.
the jokes.
I mean, I don't know. That's a different, leave that tab open. But like,
Different.
but also, are we against racial humor? Like, is that a thing? I thought we fought.
I know what
all
you mean.
this, I thought we fought for all this stuff because we were annoyed that racial humor went away. Like, now you can do racial humor again. And guess what? Sometimes the funniest racial humor is like in the parlance of Homer Simpson making fun of white people and saying, ha ha ha, we're so lame. Like,
No, I agree.
I don't know.
Yeah. That's, you can't throw that fit after years of legitimate grievances related to, like, essentially bullying through comedy.
Yeah.
Or like, or like, to use the proper parlance, like sort of like an oppressive authoritarian approach to like what you can say and what you can't say. It's like, and also let's just go back to, it's just a joke, dude. Like, either it's funny or it's not. And like Chappelle said, like, you can hang up the phone. You don't have to watch you don't have to watch it. Like,
well, there's the classic Tyler the Creator tweet. It's like what are people are talking about cyberbullying? LOL, close your eyes.
Tyler, man. Yeah.
But yeah, so the right is in ascendancy.
Yeah.
The left is totally demoralized. I saw I follow an account that brings the most unhinged stuff from Blue Sky to Twitter. And, George Conway is talking about needing an alternative to Amazon, which is literally a thing that people on the right were doing like 6 months ago. Like,
parallel
this
economy
is crazy, man. What is going on? This is like, I didn't think that we would just Freaky Friday in the way that we have. It is 13 going on 30, dude.
Yeah, it's not like, that's maybe a memory issue, but it's also intrinsic to like the power dynamic of, when the underdog fights his way up and finally wins. It's like, okay, now this is really hard. This is a tricky position. Everybody's looking at me. Everybody's trying to criticize me. I can't see where all the criticisms are coming from, and they're coming so fast. And that's when you really, like, that requires poise. It requires like good memory for like, oh yeah, I got slapped in the face, so I shouldn't do that. That's a big part of who I am. So that has been interesting, but it's also like the pace of things is so like it keeps getting faster somehow.
It is, and from the political side, obviously there's just a relentless element of messaging from the White House, which is so much more cleanly run than the last time. But at the same time, man, there's some really, really dumb fights. I am not a huge fan of what's happening with the AP and the press department with this Gulf of America stuff. Have you followed this?
Sorry, what was the first part of that? I got a notification. Let me turn off my notifications.
Oh, no problem.
You're not a big fan of what's with the Gulf of America stuff?
With just the fight between the Associated Press and the White House press department on the AP not changing in the style guide to Gulf of America, which if people are not familiar, I don't know this, right? So I'm just going to take a wild guess. The reason why the White House press department is mad at the AP for not referring to the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America is, I'm going to take a wild guess that somebody who may or may not be the president of the United States was reading something or saw something that said Gulf of Mexico, and he said, why is it Gulf of Mexico? We renamed it Gulf of America. Somebody called that outlet, and that outlet said, hey, look, we adhere to AP style, which is something that inside the journalism tent, that's just the way that you standardize across all of your writers, the way that things are written, right? So every outlet has their own version. Yeah, every outlet has their own version. Most of them are modded 99% on the AP Style Guide. If you were starting a journalism outlet tomorrow, you would use the AP Style Guide because it's just the easiest way to do it. Now, we can have a conversation about whether or not the AP Style Guide has gotten too activist and weird. I think there's a credible argument to say that they have made curious decisions over the last 10 years. But at the same time, that's the reason why AP is being picked on, is because AP runs the AP Style Guide, and the AP Style Guide has not changed Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America. I don't really care about that. I would be fine with them being banned from Air Force One, and they're not banned, they're just not being invited. For any number of reasons, up to and including the AP doesn't have the same reach that it used to. It's not as culturally important as it used to. Maybe everybody who gets automatic invites to all these things needs to cycle out and have a random person that's in there. Because guess what? There'll probably be more people hearing about that for the first time if Theo Vaughn was in the Oval Office than it would be if the AP wrote the 50 millionth report about it, especially in a world where everything is live streamed, right? Everything is video. There's less of a heft to describe it in the written word. All that being said, I don't like the fact that they're fighting about this water name. The water name thing bothers me.
Yeah, it's I see what you mean. It's a little bit petty, and it's also like, hey, come on. It's in Google Maps, man.
You won. You won.
Yeah, you got just go on to the next thing. No, I agree. Another thing that I'm usually like glass half full most of the time, but I really like the fact that somebody is telling the AP like, no, you can't do that. No, I don't like that. And because they're just like so powerful. And I think I'm maybe going over something that you're like, we don't need to talk about this, but
no.
It's cool that, well, first of all, we got to get Joe Rogan in there at least once for with Trump and Rogan, Trump on the press side, because that'll completely officially demolish the idea that legacy media is this certain institution. No, it's changed. Things are different. Let's move forward. But I do like that because it's funny. Just last night, I was showing my daughter clips of airplanes because we're going to take her first air flight soon. And I did the search in Google Pics, and the clips of you and me in Tulsa for Air Force One.
For Air Force One.
Those came up, and I was like, hey, look, this is our president right here. Me and my kids call you Dancing Bird guy, because ever since they saw the Dancing Bird.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, this is me and Dancing Bird guy. We're like very close to the president. And just looking at Trump in that clip, it was like he's doing all the hands, he's doing all the Trump stuff. But that was really cool. Like, we got to do a lot. Like, Trump was good, and I know that I work for a conservative outlet, but Trump was good to the press, and it's nice to see that again. Like, and especially
I think he might have already spoken more words less than a month in publicly than Biden spoke in 4 years. Like, I would actually be curious to see if anybody has counted it up, but it feels like he is in live, open, gaggle press availabilities 3 times a day and has been since inauguration.
Yeah, I think you can make that. I think you can say that now. And Hannity said it the night of the inauguration, in typical Hannity, a little bit buzzed on air at one of the balls. And he's just like, yeah, I think he's said more today than Biden did in 4 years. And then, like, Hannity's like walking it back as he's saying it. Like, maybe the first year.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's good. Like, the press transparency. And a lot of that is like, well, I have to, or maybe in the more Trumpian fashion, like, I can do better than they can.
Well, I mean, here. Let me, and I should point out that you are a former member of the White House Correspondents Association.
Oh, yes, sir.
Right?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So this comes with an element of personal stake. I think that I'm happy that there is a conversation about the press house's relationship with these outlets that is being talked about. And I don't like the fact that there is a punishment for the AP on this thing, the water name thing. I just like, look, they're gonna make their own decision. You shouldn't be determining their access based on that. Again, I think of the people that get those automatic invites, you've got probably 6 or 7 groups that are all serving the same customer. If the point of the automatic invites is that you are trying to provide the widest diversity of audience, there's a lot of people who just don't watch mainstream news and want an alternative outlet. I think you should be putting that out there. Find gigantic people that would do that. Anyway, all that being said, the Biden White House kicked out a bunch of people that were asking the questions that, as it turns out, should have been asked. Anybody who asked about the age stuff, except for Peter Doocy, because you can't kick him out without it being a gigantic scandal, they all got booted. All the smaller organizations got booted from or just were not called on for doing that, but they would never be invited to these other things. So I don't know. I'm glad that there's a conversation about it. I am not a fan of it, and it is one of those elements that I had forgotten about the Trump experience, and longtime listeners will remember this, that the argument with Trump is like, are you so much of a loser that you can't realize when you've won? And every once in a while, it's been less of that, but
that's a good line.
It's hard for him to stop counterpunching even when he has punched out his opponent. He's like, I don't know, he blinked. Let me punch him again.
So is Drumpf gone? You think? Do you think we'll see Drumpf again?
Oh, on Blue Sky. I'm sure somebody's drumping even as we speak right now. Are you kidding? I mean, but that is the thing, is that
Crumpf. Sorry, Crumpf.
Crump.
Trump, right? That's your Trump. Trump.
I think we've seen Calm Trump. I mean, like a lot of these, the press availabilities are not quite as hostile. Like it made news last Sunday during the Super Bowl when somebody asked him a question about something and he didn't like it, and he was like, oh, who are you with? Like HuffPo? Like, I thought they died. Like that used to be the baseline volume of him doing open, like in the era where like Jim Acosta was like standing up and doing his like performance art. Like that was like the baseline element of him being catty. Now he's mostly just like, you hear him sometimes too calm when he's just like, I don't know, Gaza, beautiful land. It'd be great for a hotel. Several golf courses. Can you imagine Tiger Woods and hole one in Trump Gaza? Be a beautiful sight. I think the Palestinians would love it. Like there's things that he sometimes says too calmly, but I think that is a difference. You see more of that, and there's a reason why most of the criticism of the administration is not on him; it's on Elon, because Elon is the one who is doing the things that are chaotic. It's not Trump.
For sure. Yeah. Well, better Elon in the Oval Office than Kanye, because that's what it was last time.
Oh, jeez. Oh, man.
I said the word, dude.
Yeah, probably the last. We were on the last helicopter out of Kanye City. We were there. Unless you're still there. Unless you're boarded up. You're boarded up in the office supply closet, just waiting for everything to calm down.
I still have a chance. No, I know that a lot of it is him joking and like him probably being off the meds or whatever, but I know there is like a point where you can go too far and like, just saying, "Oh, look who I triggered." It's not even funny. So if the only reason you're doing it is to be like edgy, it's like, well, if you're going to be edgy like that, you better be at least funny. It's not even now. It's just like a little bit concerning, and it's like, okay, we have cultural taboos that there is a point where you can just kind of leave something alone.
Yeah, he doesn't need to go 36 straight hours where he's just up all day and all night just saying kind of third grade. Like, oops, can I not say that? Like, I think he lost me when he said, he put up the picture of the like King Tut's tomb and was like, sometimes you have to whip your Jews. That was where that was the line. Yeah. The line that crossed for me.
I didn't see that
also,
one. That's,
it's like, look, and then by the time that it flamed out, it was just him posting just pornography, just 10-minute clips of porn.
That's the other thing. Like the Grammy stunt just felt sad. And it was like, it felt like exploitation, or it's like kind of this principle that I believe in where it's like, people can do whatever they want in their personal relationship with their partner, but, don't bring the rest of the world into it. That's just, I don't know. It felt kind of gross. It felt very gross.
Yeah. I mean, really, it's like the holdout was always, but the music. And,
yeah, that's true. That's true.
And the music is like, Vultures was fine, had a few good bangers on it, but really the thing that I liked the most about Vultures was that it was the first album he had in a while where it sounded like he was like really having fun. And now it's just kind of sad. He switched sides in the Drake-Kendrick feud during that thing. So now he's like, back on Drake's side, which, I guess he just loves the guy that's being yelled at.
Probably.
He was one of the guys yelling at Drake when it all went down. So
startling parallel between the first thing we talked about, which is we always do this. I love it. Yeah. I have to say on the Kendrick Drake side of things, I'm like, I'm like way more of a Drake guy. I've always been, and I've never really liked. I know I was just blasting him a second ago, but I've never been super into Kendrick. Like my wife is always, so I'm always listening to Kendrick, but I don't. That Mad City was good. Like Pimp a Butterfly is where he started to lose me when he was doing the poem. Just felt kind of like contrived, and it's funny because a lot of people who know me are like, "Oh, that's like the perfect album for you." He's like, abstract, and he's doing these kind of ideas that you would have seen in like golden era hip hop, almost just the very intellectual side of things. But I don't know, but it's also been sad, man. It's been sad to see Drake just pummeled so ruthlessly, and to be like, still. I know he hasn't really said very much since the Super Bowl, but and I think he caused a lot of this. Just the way he acted.
Drake, yes, he did cause a lot of it
from the beginning.
Oh,
well, I mean, of their feud.
They've been sneak dissing each other for 10 years. There was I forget which album it was that Kendrick released the hearts here. Okay, explaining to people who don't know what these things are. Kendrick Lamar has a habit of putting out a song called The Heart, and he titles them like part 1, part 2, part 3, but he usually puts out that one song before he puts out an album. And there was one that came out, I think probably 8 years ago, where he just had, it was very vociferous, and it was like I just can't wait to sun your punk ass, F up your whole little ass, like, and it was very clear because he used a lot of the same verbiage that he used on that song in the diss tracks that he was talking about Drake. He never said it, but he, was obviously doing it. Drake is somebody who's really crashing out in a big way. He just put out a new album last weekend, and it like kind of already feels like it was here and gone. Like,
I didn't even know he. Oh, that's what he's touring on right now. Okay, that makes sense. See, I didn't even know. Like, for a Drake guy, his last like 3 albums have been pretty.
Have just been not great.
Yeah, it was like ever since the like ghostwriter thing, the thing about him having ghostwriters, it became like an open discussion. He's just, that's kind of like when he went downhill. It's like, dude, just keep the ghostwriters. It's fine. There's the famous story of Kendrick. I think it was Eminem or Dr. Dre keeping Kendrick in the studio, locked down, nobody else in there, and like freestyle. Yeah. I want to know that you're actually brilliant, and he really is that brilliant.
Yeah,
Drake's not going to pass that test with Eminem.
No,
but that's okay. That's okay. Like,
he doesn't need to be that. He's a pop star. Like, just be a pop star. There's no reason. Like, the weird thing about Drake is that he does feel so much thirstier for the attention, and he wants to just be things that he is not in a way that rings inauthentic. But it also brings us to this whole like Canada stuff. Like, Canada hates America in a way that probably has not existed in our lifetime. Did you see any of that hockey game over the weekend?
Drake is a Canadian. I love that transition.
Drake is a Canadian, famous Canadian. Yeah.
I woke up this morning and Instagram. By
the way, I knew for a fact that Kamala was going to lose after Drake took that L. When I found out that Kamala spent a significant amount of her upbringing in Canada, I'm like, there's no way that a light-skinned Canadian is going to win in the year of our Lord 2024. I'm sorry. It's just not. It's not their time. Yeah. It's not their time.
That's a brilliant. Using like the cultural situation of Drake as a premise for that conclusion, I love. Yeah, that's really clever.
How should we as an American feel about Canada hating us?
Yeah,
booing our national anthem.
Yeah, my view of it is probably a little skewed because I didn't watch the game live, and what I saw this morning when I woke up and looked at Instagram was just like reel after reel of Freebird playing while the pummeling's going on.
Yeah.
So, I love Canada. They're our brothers, so I want to think of this as like a sibling feud that I'll get over it. But I also, in this relationship, automatically assume that we're the older one. So I don't know if that's like fair. I think
that's the problem
to make that claim. Yeah.
Yeah, the problem is, I just think Canada is kind of down bad a little bit. They've had the same party in charge for a really long time. The prime minister was so unpopular he had to resign, yet because of their system, he still gets to make decisions until like another month or so, which is kind of crazy that it's like, even if you're going to elevate somebody else in your party, shouldn't like that person also be in the room? Shouldn't you be like co-prime ministers, like quote unquote, for a little bit? Like, I don't know. This is why I only understand the rip roaring American system in the real way. But some of it feels like it is like the antagonism of the like Governor Trudeau 51st state thing. Yeah. On top of the idea that at any point there's going to be like, there could be a 25% tariff that could like really significantly hurt their economy, which is already not doing great. like that there is a like wait, like how much do you guys get to play with us? Like at a certain point, we're gonna be mad. But I guess that's how I'm trying to think about it. Is like
it's a pot shot. You feel like it's just kind of below the belt.
I kind of feel
Okay.
This is gonna probably even get me in more trouble. Sorry, Canadians. It feels like
They'll be all right.
a super upset colony to an empire.
Oh, dude, that's a roast.
I know, and I don't want, but because it's not like I've gotten emails because I've talked about it on We're Not Wrong, and it's like the emails aren't hey, screw you, buddy. Like they're not from a point of equals. They're from a point of like, I'm hurt because you obviously have more control over us than we have over you. Like, yes, do we benefit a little bit? Like, why is that so bad? How much more do you need? It's that like 99% versus 1%, like all those dynamics of like, shouldn't you have enough? Don't you have enough? I want to hurt you because you are, through your greed, hurting me. And like, that doesn't come from a position of like equals, of like, I'm going to outcompete you. That comes from a position of like, I'm on the ground and you're in a blimp. And so I'm going to see how much I can throw a rock to like, just hit it. Like, I know I'm not going to bring you down, but I just want to make you feel bad. And like, I got 2 or 3 emails about that with that kind of tone. And then you see like, it wasn't just a weekend thing. Like, people are just booing, Canadians just booing the American national anthem at sporting events. So I don't know. I don't quite know how to process it because I do love Canada. I've always had a great relationship with Canadians. Except when they tried to tip me in South Florida. But those were mostly Quebecois. So as long as we're not talking about Quebecois tipping when I was working as a waiter, I have nearly universally positive things to say about Canadians. Yeah, French Canadians don't tip.
Yeah, then that's not a good look.
Don't.
You can always tell when somebody worked as a waiter. I love this.
Yeah.
That's one of my like metrics. It's so good for you as a person. So there's a part of me that thinks the booing is very funny because it feels like I'm not your buddy, pal. Like it's like, oh, you really hurt me with that one. But also I think the fact that they just got bodied at their own sport is sort of like
that's
Kendrick Drake right there. Yeah, like
because by the
it
way,
wasn't
like,
baseball.
America saw it on Instagram in a few clips. Canada has wall-to-wall coverage of hockey at all times, no matter what. So it's like they had to sit in that one just based on what they watch on television for way longer than America. If America lost, we'd be like, hey, good for them. That's the other problem is that anybody who wants to criticize America, you have to understand, we don't. Everybody hates us anyway. I think we're conditioned to believe that everybody kind of hates us no matter what. And so it's like, it just doesn't register. And also, we're very self-centered. Like we don't really care what anybody thinks. If they were like, we love you, we're like, okay. It's like, we hate you, cool. Like America is its own universe. Like we kind of care about our own things.
Yeah, no, that has been, and as someone who's traveled quite a bit, you know this as well. Like I used to teach English in Spain every summer through my 20s. And that was one of the things I found is even the people who were like very critical, usually from a sort of like anti-capitalist perspective of America, they almost always were like, I would see them drinking a Coke or like on their iPhone or whatever. So, or like singing along to Lady Gaga. So there is an element, and you can definitely feel that. Like, it's okay for me to not know how to be able to explain the parliamentary system. And, because my dad's Irish, I know a lot of the like nationalistic struggles and struggles for independence that have happened in that part of the world. But yeah, it is also like, it's okay. like I'll know what's going on in Brazil when the revolution takes place, but until then, just keep doing all that stuff.
I think it's also just kind of fatigue because America has a relationship with everybody, and not every country has a relation. They have the relationships with their neighbors and maybe their broader community on the continent, but America is like, all right, we got to know what Chad thinks about it. I mean, like just over the last month, PEPFAR for AIDS prevention in Africa, a relationship that America has with that region. J.D. Vance pisses off all of Western Europe by saying that they censor too many things on the internet. That's our relationship with them. China, obviously. We have this, Russia, America and Russia are talking about the future of Ukraine in Saudi Arabia. These are all things that happened in the last 3 weeks that just kind of glide off our back like water to a duck because that's America's footprint, which is everywhere.
Dude, that's cool guy syndrome.
It is.
And
America has severe cool guy syndrome.
Definitely, like, oh, hey, Brittany, and it's like, no, that's not her name. Like, it's like, we're actually Ghana. Well, we're not Kenya. That's a whole different culture. But it's like, oh yeah, well, see you later, Ghana. That feels. I mean, it's very exciting to be a part of an environment where like the flux of information and valuable information is so intense and constant that it's like a buffet of ideologies and feelings and wild events, and it's like, oh yeah, one of our guys was there, this involves us, like, oh cool, let's check in with him, or we don't have to check in with him, who cares, let's go to the next one, next country.
I mean, like the fight right now with Doge, where Doge is ripping through USAID, and I'm not here to defend USAID because it has been I think rightly a punching bag forever on a bipartisan basis. But the ripping it out was entirely domestic. It was, I mean, in a lot of ways, that is the idea of America First, right? Is that it's like, well, we shouldn't care about what is happening beyond our borders until we can get our fiscal house in order. And if we're $34 trillion in debt, then maybe we should be thinking more about paying our own bills than being a nice guy around the world. It's really, really cool to do that. But also, we need to figure that out. And save me the emails about exactly how big of a percentage USAID is to our budget in general. Yes, I know that, God, I hate that I have to self-edit that because it's on both sides. It's like both the libertarian side and the liberal democratic side, where it's like the liberal democratic side is like, oh, why are you like, the cruelty is the point, I guess. And then the libertarian side is like, well, entitlements are the real thing. And it's like, God, just whatever. USAID sucks. It sucked forever. It's been made fun of by both parties, like forever. And yet the rooting of the rooting out of it was largely just because of money, domestic things. Yeah. No care for kind of what has gone on, even though we've restarted some of the other programs. But like,
it was a cool guy syndrome response. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm glad you bring this up because and I think this is a really cool part of the phenomenon that's happening right now. I was like very new to, I didn't really know the reputation of USAID. I really didn't know any. I might not have even realized they exist.
Yes.
So it's cool to hear.
By the way, it's why it's a political winner, because most voters are like you, and they're like why do we care? What? It's like, how many $1 billion? Like, who cares? Whatever. Like, I'm just trying to heat up my manwich on my lunch break. like why are these people screaming about this?
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, it's pretty insider, for sure, is what it seems like, and that's obviously like a fascinating part of the scandal, and it's really cool because these are the moments in the press when you get to see like whoever like speaks first and kind of educates the rest of us on any given topic, and hopefully it could be, we get to do that on a certain situation. That's part of the thrill of what we do. But it's also cool to see like who actually knows what they're talking about pretty quickly, because then we all pretend to know what we're talking about after that.
Yeah.
And then,
Here's all you need to know, Kevin, is that if you've ever heard like any politician, but Rand Paul's probably the example of it these days, that will just have one of those monologues where he's talking about like frivolous spending from America. Like, it's like $4 billion for a copy machine race in Helsinki to benefit people with crossed eyes. Like that, those are always USAID programs. Like that's where
I know that
comes
monologue
from. Yes.
so well.
Yes.
So that's a cool connection to make. I've heard those from him and his dad. Those like, I mean, those are like fiery. So now now I see. Like until him, I guess every time I heard that word, I was like, oh yeah, he's definitely talking about somebody bad.
Well, that, and then there was a whole cottage industry, probably typified by Mike Benz, on like how much USAID has been a front for the State Department and the CIA. Is like when you have to move money that you're not legally allowed to move, USAID is the way that you move it, and you get from here to there. And so
that's kind of one of the questions I had. Like, is this sort of something, because like we talked about before, I'm a big believer that like politics does need a veil. It does need to be ugly. There are things that need to happen beyond our view. There are things that we shouldn't know about. Like, do you think this is an instance where you have an operation that's supposed to be covert, and maybe it's a little iffy times, but it's like, yeah, we're the good guys over there, but when really it's like a national security operation or something like that? Is that what's taking place? Like 100%. The veil's been pulled off and we needed the veil?
Well, the problem with these kinds of situations, which was very interesting to see on a bipartisan basis when people brought up like, oh, by the way, this is used for clandestine stuff for the CIA and the State Department. Like, there was like this one strain of people that were like, I, for one, think it's good that we have that. And it's like, okay, interesting. The problem is
keep that up.
The problem is that if it's secret, it can be used for anything. So it's like, if it's a secret thing that is run by the CIA or the State Department, it can also be a money laundering operation. And if the point of it is that it's secret, then that's
so
that.
it's like intrinsically and morally a bad thing to do, so it shouldn't be done.
I don't know if it's intrinsically or morally a bad thing to do. It probably has its place, but also it shouldn't be in the like definitely not clandestine money funnel. like that shouldn't be where you do it, right? If I know, like, I'll put it this way. After all this went down, I found out a friend of mine had a connection to an organization that was moving money into the Middle East, and they were paid by USAID. Like, if I know that, then you might as well just send the pallet jacks with CIA written on the side of it. Like, like whatever. Like, it's not, you're not doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing.
For sure. And I saw that with like, did you see that picture of, I think it was like Taliban fighters, and it was like a volleyball tournament
tent
photo, and it was like, well, they're not stupid. Like, they probably took that photo and they probably leaked that. It's like there's so much that goes on, and I think there's a part of me that enjoys. There's like the puzzle solver that enjoys like being like, I don't know where the trickery is. Yeah, I want to figure out, but I also don't want to ruin the magic trick. That might be bad, though.
This is my one last big idea that I want your opinion on.
Beautiful.
I've largely seen it from pundits that were on the like excommunicated left. So people that took stances usually on things like censorship and trans issues that were excommunicated by the greater populace of the left and were denied things that would normally be given to them in that hierarchy because they were not pure, that now are like, I am seeing on the right what I saw on the left, that the right is becoming puritanical. The right is becoming, that they are guarding their positions on a basis of either you need to be perfect or not. Do you think that the woke right is a thing?
Yes.
Or is that too clean of a bind?
It could be a tactic. I mean, it could be just like it could have been a tactic of the right to like, because I remember like covering profiling people. It was Christina Hofsummers. I was profiling her and going to events, and it was like the left still owned, like, stay woke was like an empowering phrase.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So it's been cool over the course of like 10 years seeing the sociological shift in the use of that word, which it happens all the time. I think it's kind of shifted even on like the left has gotten to that point where like, whatever, you're still saying that. So I think, a beautiful new word will pop up for what's going on. I think,
the actions are more what I'm talking about.
So,
do you think that we're in a world where now that the right owns the power structure, instead of it being, a 5-flag Twitter account that cancels some professor for saying something the wrong way or cancels J.K. Rowling, now it's Cat Turd 2, and now Cat Turd 2 is in the catbird seat.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That's like, that's the paradox that like that Marxism has never been able to solve. Like, what do you do when you finally achieve the revolutionary action? When you become the thing that you are told to destroy, do you destroy yourself? And the answer is never no. Like, you ride the ship until the next revolution comes up and you're really upset about it. And intrinsic to that, I think this is really the dart of that idea. There's a deep hypocrisy that's always implied. So it's like, come on, you can't live up to what you want. And I think there's an element of that, but it's still early enough. I don't know if it's like, hey, you need to sit down for a little bit. Yeah. There has been a power shift. This happens. But now just because you don't have the spotlight and the microphone doesn't mean there's an injustice being committed against you. Maybe you just need to sit down for a little bit. So it might be fair play, but I don't know. It's so early for all this, and this is such an exciting phase. The earliness, this power shift change.
You want to know what? And we're recording this on President's Day, but I will say, because I was one of the axioms that I've always had ringing around my head on this topic is that, revolutionaries very rarely get to see the fruits of their revolutions because they don't make good dignitaries. They don't make good dignitaries. They don't make good rulers in peacetime. They usually keep agitating and agitating and agitating. They usually wind up attacking the thing that they fought a revolution to create until they eventually get killed. And
always murdered.
That's just the role. Except here in the good old US of A. There's no story of a founding father that they all just kind of lived, got old, and died, or old for them, so it was like 31, but like none of them got guillotined, none of them got firing squatted, even Aaron Burr, like he was still wanted to shoot people, and that just kind of we wrote a musical about it.
Dude, I will fight a Canadian for the truth of that statement. I'll beat them at their own sport. I know that's a cool guy thing. I don't know.
I guess, yeah,
is that
you're
our
right. You're right.
theme?
Our
Like
greatest
the
weakness
cool
is
guy?
that we care too much and we work too hard. That's the United States of America. Insufferably cool.
Yeah, I think that is kind of what's going on. But there also
Maybe
is
that's
like,
why international news is so fascinating to America, because like a lot of it that gets out there, especially into Western Europe, is very negative, and I think it just makes everybody feel better to be like, oh God, can you imagine? Ugh. Oh God, America, oh the worst.
oh, that absolutely. But the Coca-Cola is still in their hand, which is like,
Yep.
yeah, I love that.
And also,
though.
that's
love
what I always tell people in Europe. It's like everywhere I've been in Europe, if I'm at a bar, they usually have the news on at some point, and there is going to be a 10-minute block that will cover what happened in America that day. In America, we've got a 3-minute block that covers the entire world. It's like we don't. It's like in Thailand this happened, in Ireland this happened, and in Uganda this happened. Anyway, back to a squirrel on water skis.
An American squirrel on water skis. Yeah, it's funny too, because a lot of those clips in that very limited amount of time, all they're doing is providing context for a horrific event. Oh yeah, the Civil War has gotten out. Oh yeah, by the way, they're having a Civil War. It goes back 8 centuries, but it has to fit in there. Whereas what the rest of the world is seeing, especially in Europe, is like and in parts of Asia, is the executive orders took place on this day. The detail is so much more refined.
People in Western Europe know who Marjorie Taylor Greene is. Like they know who
sure.
AOC is.
And they have opinions about them.
And they have strong opinions, strong opinions about it, which is like crazy, because if you ask most Americans, even ones that would consider themselves politically literate, I would wonder if they would know who the Prime Minister of the UK is. Do you know the Prime Minister of the UK?
No, that's what I was trying to think. I know former. I couldn't
They've
tell
changed
you.
them a little frequently recently, but Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour Prime Minister. But I don't think that people would know that offhand. Maybe they would know Macron in France, but that's only because Candace Owens is going on and on about his wife.
Oh man, what a
or should I say, in the parlance of Candace, wife ?
All cats. That is another part that I really enjoy about this is like France is a cool guy too. Like they are very. We know more about France than we do about Estonia.
Because we have such cultural DNA connections to France.
For sure. But they're also cool, and they act like a cool guy. Like you've been to Paris, right?
I've actually never been to France.
You've never been to France?
I've been to England. I've been to Germany. I've been through the former Yugoslavia, Poland.
Oh, that's cool.
Bulgaria, but no, never France.
That is a cool way to do it, like through Eastern Europe. I haven't done enough of that. I spent most West mainland and then obviously Ireland and England quite a bit, but I haven't gone. Czech Republic is as far east as I've gone.
Yeah, Bulgaria was pretty cool. I went when I was pretty young. I was still in college. I was in Poland. I mean, I've told this story a million times, but yeah, I had one of the best nights drinking ever in Poland. It was amazing.
With vodka?
Because it was during the Iraq War when we were upset with Western Europe, and we were talking about like old Europe and new Europe, and Poland was in new Europe. So like they loved Americans, because like Poland loves anybody that hates Western Europe. So we're probably actually super popular in Poland.
Oh,
America's probably
definitely
super popular.
For sure.
But also they're not on the euro. They were on the zloty. And so it's like the American dollar just spent like a mother over there. So, just like I'm like 21 and I'm like, I'm buying a round of beers for the bar. $5 on the table. It was amazing.
With the vibe of them being enjoying America at the time.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
a cool combo.
because they would make the accent immediately. The only place that I've ever had really bad vibes with the accent was the last time we were
with your accent.
With an American accent.
With an
right?
American, okay,
for them, it's we're all Tony Stark.
Oh yeah.
But they it was Serbia.
Oh,
was,
interesting.
Because NATO bombed Serbia, so that was a problem, and they have not forgotten about it. They and also it's like NATO on the rise with the Ukraine thing. Serbia is very heavily Russian influenced, and so that was the only bad. It wasn't even bad vibes. It just wasn't like, normally everywhere you go, and maybe again, this is cool guy syndrome. Everywhere you go, and I don't think that this is unique to Americans, because if I worked at a bar and somebody with a thick accent came in, I would ask them about, whether or not they were visiting and where they were from and stuff like that. But almost everybody will have some question of like, oh, where are you from? Not
Definitely.
Serbia. They're like, we know, and we don't.
I see you.
Tell that to Bill
Dark
Clinton.
memories. Yeah.
No, I was like, they still had like this gigantic banner out that was like Bill Clinton and Tony Blair are war criminals. And it was like from the 90s. Like it looked tattered as hell. Like that they've just left this thing out.
Keeping it up.
Or maybe it was in a basement and they brought it back out when the whole Ukraine thing happened.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. I wouldn't realize, like, I don't know if I have ever been anywhere where, because we all know, like, an American passport means like, don't mess with me unless you want the fury of the American president potentially like directed immediately at you, and the SEAL team comes in and kills you. And so like we have that with our passport.
Like if I screw up at my job driving a boat, we will headshot a Somali teenager. Like that is the privilege. That is the privilege of being in America. Like we can be bad at our job, and if you try and take advantage, we will shoot you. We will send elite killers around the world to shoot a teenager.
Yeah, no, that's spot on, dude.
It's a pretty dark way to end the show, but
I love it.
I would like to thank Kevin Ryan for being on the program. What you got cooking, man?
Oh man, I love this. Is anytime. I love doing this all the time.
It's always the best.
Like, yeah, because it's just you and me. Like we're talking to a friend, and what we talk about gets to like potentially make people's day.
We're talking to two friends, each other, and you, the listener.
I genuinely love that. That is a good way to
do it. That's the way to
do it. I'm working on some cool stuff. It's been a lot of, I'm diving into a lot more of like the picking up of the phone and going to events and doing a lot of more of the journalistic stuff than I, previously had. So that's been really cool.
What a pain in the ass that stuff is. God, it's so.
Oh, come on! I got to email.
Whenever I want to do it, it's just like, it's so hard. I could just talk about my opinions. That's so much easier.
Well, you just like spit fire immediately from like the encyclopedia of your brain. So like you are the guy who does the hot take that is like, okay, he knows what he's talking about. And it happens a lot in a lot of different subjects. So like for me, it's like, I tell pretty stories. So it's nice to like incorporate other different voices of writing. And it's just been cool. Like, I think my career is doing such a interesting thing. Like as a writer, I'm like actually entering new terrain again. When you after a while, you kind of assume like I know what I'm doing. I've written in 10 different distinct styles that I understood, and I'm actually doing something new. So it's like an exciting time, and I've had a lot of homers lately, so that's been really cool. That's been fun.
Always good.
Yeah,
always good. Always good when the bat's hot. Kevin Ryan, thank you so much for joining us.
All right, brother. Talk soon, man.
that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, 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 written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. You can email the program, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. Find, follow, and share video clips of the show. Justin R. Young on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. YouTube is politicspoliticspolitics.com. Support us with a one-time donation, paypal.me/payjury. Venmo is Justin-Young-20, and Cash App is PX3 Cash. Send me anything you'd like in the mail. Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. Of course, you can only get our bonus content at TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Paying members get 2 bonus episodes each and every week, either $3 a week or $99 for the entire year. 150 episodes of PX3 for under $100. Jeez Louise with cheese. I mean, come on, man. What are we doing? But it is only at the founding tier that you get your name read at the end of the show, like these fine folks in the Titanic founding tier, including L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Sarah Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes, oh yeah, it's Adam, Neil, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Will Porter, The Borge B, Matthew, Matt, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Devon, Paul, a dog named Checkers, Gloria Young, my mom, Jerry, Trucker, John, Berkeley, Steven, and Zombie Doc. If you want your name read on the show, one place to do it, TakePoliticsSeriously.com. I hope you guys have a phenomenal weekend. We got, I don't know what we have coming up next week, but we'll know then. I'll see you for the Sunday show if you are a subscriber. But till then, this is your old pal Justin Robert Young saying, some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, and still more discuss politics, but this is the only show that dares discuss all 3.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show Audio.